A reading from the letter to the Hebrews. Let us be on our guard while the promise of entering into his rest remains, that none of you seem to have failed. For in fact, we have received the good news just as our ancestors did. But the word that they have heard did not profit them, for they were not united in faith with those who listened. For we who believed enter into that rest, just as he has said, "As I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest." And yet his works were accomplished at the foundation of the world. For he has spoken somewhere about the seventh day in this manner, and God rested on the seventh day from all his works. And again, in the previously mentioned place, "They shall not enter into my rest." Therefore, let us strive to enter into that rest, so that no one may fall after the same example of disobedience. The word of the Lord.
It's a beautiful reading we have in our gospel. I want to focus a little bit more on the letter to the Hebrews that we've been hearing for the past few days. There's a prayer that is known to priests and religious as the invitatory prayer. It's the very introduction to the Liturgy of the Hours that we begin each morning. And the invitatory prayer has a few different psalms that you can use, but the one that is kind of prescribed as kind of the norm is the one that's quoted here. It's quoted in yesterday's scriptures as well. It talks about, again, as an opening prayer to the day, it's a little bit stark, but it's a good reminder. Right? In the psalm, it discusses how the Israelites were unfaithful, how they tested God. They put God to the test, which we know is a big offense to God. But it's kind of the church's way to kind of call the attention of all of us to say, hey, make sure that we're centered on the right things. It's a little bit of St. Thomas's via negativa, right? The negative way, showing you what something is not before we're talking about what it is. Telling someone what not to believe before you tell somebody what to believe. So the church's message to us there is, don't let your hearts grow hardened like the Israelites in the desert before us, but rather to allow our hearts to be softened and to trust in the Lord. Recently, it was called to my mind a friend. I was listening to someone tell me about their friendship with someone else, and they told so many beautiful stories. It was really wonderful and joyful and hopeful, but it also reminded me of a friend of mine. And there had been some tension in that relationship. And so I was happy for this person. I was happy to think of my friend, but then I was also upset by the tension that had been there previously. Man, it's kind of a bummer. And it was the joy and the affection that this other person was exuding about their friend caused for that stony part of my heart to be softened. I just remember kind of pressing past my own bitterness and my own anger and being able by God's grace to enter into, the sadness that had come from the way that we had both been frustrated by our current situation. To also kind of revisit the feeling of rejection that I had felt. And so I had been able to get past the anger that had kind of been on the outside and get deeper into those more vulnerable feelings. They're not really positive feelings, right? Nobody likes to feel abandoned or rejected. Nobody likes to feel sad or angry. But I think we've discussed this before. Of the negative emotions, anger is the easier of them because it comes with this kind of false sense of power over the other person. Oh, well, I'm angry at you, so you owe me because you messed up and you hurt me, and now you're not allowed to hurt me anymore, so I'm going to show you my anger. And we use it as a kind of a social defense mechanism sometimes. It keeps us. It's also kind of a emotional survival tactic because I don't want to have to press into all those vulnerable places in my own heart. I don't want to deal with the rejection or the abandonment or the sadness. By God's grace that day, and just listening to this person tell me about their friend, he ushered me deeper into my own heart. And it was encountering the abandonment and encountering the rejection and getting past the anger and encountering the sadness. I felt joy, which seemed strange. But the joy was coming from knowing that I was getting that bitterness was holding me back. I was realizing how my anger on the outside was keeping me from being able to move forward. It was keeping me stuck in the past. And this one thing that happened kept me bitter against this other person. Ooh, that's not a good thing. It's not a Christian thing. That's not what Jesus does with us. Anger keeps us stuck. It hardens our hearts and keeps us paralyzed. We're warned in the letter of Hebrews that we won't enter into the rest of the Lord. We won't inherit his rest with a hardened heart. In encountering Jesus in the sadness, he brings peace and eventually joy. But if we believe the lies of the evil one, we think that we can just skip over the sadness and just stay in the anger and that that'll make things right. How many times I've failed in that exact way. I imagine maybe some of you have too. As we approach the table of the Lord and he gives us his own heart in the Eucharist, let's ask that our hearts would be conformed to his today, that we might be willing to let go of some of our bitterness and anger, allow ourselves to encounter his tenderness, even in the midst of our sadness, over whatever kind of thing. It could be personal, like I was just describing. It could be something that's farther away. It could be friends, family, something at church, something in the community. Maybe the thing that makes you bitter and angry is what all the crazy things that are happening in our world. Maybe it's politicians, maybe it's rioters, maybe it's political groups. Who knows? The tenderness of the heart of Jesus is the way forward, and clinging to our anger will leave us paralyzed.